Blanchimore. I hope you are comfortable. Thank you very much for giving me an hour of your time this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ollamh BrendanO Corraidhe. I am a Midrealm Bardic Laurel. I've been a storyteller in the SCA for a long time. And about 10, 15 years ago, I happened to see Master Toki Redbeard perform. And the way he told stories absolutely knocked my socks off. And so I said to myself, I want to tell stories like that. And I know what I'm going to have to do it. So I invested the time, I invested the energy, and I learned to tell stories in a apparently reasonably effective way. And so what I'd like to talk to you tonight about is a 5-step process for how to turn source material, how to turn a book into a compelling storytelling experience for your audience. Now, I'm sure we've all read storybooks. We probably all have books of medieval stories or books with some medieval stories in them. After all, we're in the SCA. And Bredwin, I see your background there, and that looks something a bit like my living room. Lots of bookshelves, no flat screen TV.
This is
so we all have these materials, but no, I don't have handouts for this particular class. I'm sorry. We all have these source materials, but if you've ever tried to read a story out of a storybook, you've probably noticed that it doesn't come across quite the same as when a storyteller tells the story in an exciting and engaging way. And the main reason for that is that telling a story is very different from reading it out loud. Now, there is research to suggest that reading stories out loud was a period practice, but stories that are written for the eye have a different feel and a different cadence than stories that are written for the ear. Because when you're reading a story from a book, especially if you're reading to yourself, you can stop and go back. You can turn the page back and say, wait, what did they do? In a storytelling event, your audience can't stop you and rewind you. So you have to keep them engaged. Also, when you are telling a story, you have the opportunity to act it out and not just rely only on the audience's imagination. You can give their imagination some prompts, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the 5-step process that I'm going to go through tonight, the first 2 steps go together, and the last 3 steps go together. The first 2 steps are research and decide which story to tell. Now, sometimes you decide which story to tell and then you do your research. Sometimes you do research to find which story to tell. So once you have your story and you have whatever research you need, maybe background information, then we move to the next 3, which are edit, wordsmith, and practice, practice, practice. Edit, wordsmith, practice, practice, practice. Pop quiz time. What are the first 2 steps?
Research.
Research. Somebody else? Holly, Magdalena?
Decide.
Decide which story to tell. Research, decide which story to tell. Okay, what are the last 3 steps? I don't want to give a hazard to that.
Edit, wordsmith, practice, practice, practice.
Edit, wordsmith, practice, practice, practice. Exactly. So to illustrate these 5 steps, I'm going to use 2 stories from my repertoire. Stories which I know from experience, empirical evidence, are successful. They're very different. One is The Last Ride of El Cid. El Cid is a 5-minute story that was cooked up literally overnight from Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And it was delivered on Saturday and helped win me the Midrealm Bardic Championship that reign. So I know it works. The other story is Gowan and the Green Knight, which was worked up over a period of 6 months. It is a 40-minute performance extravaganza. And I know it's successful because I performed it at Middle Kingdom 50th for the manyth time and had an audience in a noisy tavern who were paying attention the whole time. I've also told it for a Brit Lit class at the college where I work and have been invited back multiple times to tell it to that class. And in fact, when the professor moved the class to an online format last year, she took the video of my performance at MK50 and put it in her Blackboard site for her students to watch, and had some very nice things to say about me and the SCA, including links to sca.org and cleflands.org and midrealm.org. So I know that the process works because the stories that it produces work. So what does this all look like? Start with research and decide what story to tell. We'll start with El Cid. I have 4 kids, and they are mostly grown now, mostly out of the house. Well, half of them are out of the house. But that means, and especially going back several years, that means that I schedule SCA stuff, what I call scobligations, well in advance. I put them on the family calendar. I check with the wife. I make sure that my schedule is clear and that none of my family have need of me the weekend I'm doing SCA stuff or the evening I'm doing SCA stuff. And I have a few standing things that I'm always going to do this event, or I'm always going to, go to our Wednesday night baronial meeting, things like that. But I schedule things in advance. So here it is, Monday or Tuesday, before a large regional event that I usually don't go to because it's all melee and it's archery and it's prep for Penzik, and I don't really camp at Penzik, and so I usually don't go to Baron Wars. But I'm looking through things and I discover, oh, the Midrealm Kingdom Bardic Championship is this weekend at Baron Wars, which is only 2.5 hours away. I had at the time, a pretty limited travel radius, but I could day trip an event that's 2 to 3 hours away. Leave early in the morning, get there, get home late that night. I'm gone one day, no overnights. That's a doable thing for Daddy to do. But it's this weekend. So I go to my wife and I say, hey, honey, Kingdom Bardic is this weekend in Toledo. Can I go? And she looked up at me and she said, you better. We just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary. That's one of the reasons why. So great, I'm going to go. Now, like I said, I've been doing this a while. I have a lot of repertoire. Now, competitions bring out a side of me that's not necessarily a real nice side. But if I'm in it to win it. And this is the Kingdom Bardic Championship. And I haven't won a Kingdom Bardic Champion in all the years I've been doing this. So I figure, okay, I got a lot of repertoire. Let me pull some things out of the attic and dust them off, knock the rust off. On any given day, I can bring it. I can perform. I'm going to be good. I'll be all right. Wednesday night before the event, I go to our baronial fighter practice and I see Mistress Zoph sitting there talking with Duchess Runa. Now, if you don't know Mistress Zoph, she is a bardic force of nature, cleverly disguised as a Hungarian noblewoman. She is a storytelling monster. And she's sitting there talking to Duchess Runa. And so I walk over to say, hi, how you doing? And I hear as I'm walking up, Zoph say to Runa, Runa, I need your help. I need you to be my inspiration. I need you to be my muse. I need an idea because I need to write something for this weekend. The alarm bells start going off. I distinctly remember the words that ran through my head. Oh, shit. Zoph is not only entering the Bardic competition, she's writing something new. I've got to do something better than just dust something out of the storage trunk. So I do what any good bard does in such a situation. I shut up and listen. And I gain two key pieces of information out of that listening. One is that the king is a crusader. Now, the king is going to be the judge. And if I'm in a competition, I'm going to pander shamelessly to the judge, because that's how you win these things, is you pander to the judge, you learn the rules, you play the game, you score the points. Crusader, this is good. It's a fairly broad geographical time range. It's a couple of centuries of time, but it's not overly broad and it's not overly specific. It's not one particular village in Romania in the year 1462. I can work with Crusader. Yeah, I could do something with that. The other piece of intelligence is that this is a peace war. It is the friendship war where the East and the Middle are allied together on the same side. That's interesting. Don't know what I can do with that, but I bet I can do something with it. And fighter practice went on. I'm on my way home that evening, and it's about a 20-minute ride from fighter practice to home. And so I'm thinking, what can I do with that? I remember as I was rummaging through the basement, coming across some old Arab garb from an event long ago. Haven't worn it in years, but I can do an Arab. I mean, let's face it, with the schnoz, with the beard, you put me in a keffiyeh, I could sell the character. I could be an old Arab storyteller, because I remember that movie about El Cid where Charlton Heston played Charlton Heston playing El Cid, wearing knit chainmail with Sophia Loren. So I don't remember much about the movie, but I remember a couple of things. One, I'm pretty sure that he had allied the Muslims and the Christians together to fight the bad guys, the ones in the black scarves. And I know that they called him El Cid because he treated his captives well. The Arabic phrase for the Lord, which is how his captives referred to him, is Al-Sayyid, which got bastardized into El Cid. Okay, but how does that play into the Crusades? Well, he was always wearing chainmail. He wasn't wearing plate, so that's fairly early period. So maybe it'll work. By that time, I was home. So I got home, checked in on the family, went downstairs, logged on to the Library of Alexandria, and it's wonderful to play in the past but live in the future, because within a few hours, I had done all the research I needed in order to put together the story of El Cid's last ride. I don't know if you remember the movie or if you remember the story, but he's inspecting the defenses when the city is under siege. He gets shot by an arrow and dies. They stick him on his horse and he leads the charge at dawn out through the gates. Well, his corpse does, dressed in armor on his horse, out the gates, and they rout the bad guys, and he goes off riding down the beach, roll credits. Right? I can do this. Right? 2:00 Thursday morning, I say, yeah, I've got all the pieces I need. I've got my little Arabic phrases. I've got the basic plot. I know the name of the bad guys and some basic facts about them. I can put this together in 2 days. By golly, I'm just that good. I know I can. You got to have some confidence if you're going to be a bard, especially if you're going to be a storyteller. So, all right, let's do this. So Thursday on the drive to work, I'm working it up. On the way home, Friday, on the way to work, on the way home. Take a little break in the middle of the day, walk around a little bit, run through it in my head. How am I going to do this? We'll get to the details. Saturday, on the way to the event, I told that story I don't know how many times. Then during the day, I'm walking around telling the story to myself. Come the evening, comes the performance, I nailed it. So I know the process works. So that's how I decided to tell the story of El Cid and how I did the research. About 3 hours online, and I got all the information that I needed. So what about Gawain and the Green Knight? Are you familiar with the outline of the story of Gowens and the Green Knight? Just give me a nod or a thumbs up or a capital Y in the chat. Fairly yes, no. What's Gowens and the Green Knight? Okay. It sounds like folks generally know it. Right quick, BrendanO, why El Cid? Because.
You just answered it.
Because. Okay, so good. Okay, so people know the basic outline of Gowens and the Green Knight. Now, you know that it's broken into episodes or fits. The first episode, the scene in King Arthur's Feast Hall, where the Green Knight bursts in, confronts King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, throws down the challenge. Gawain steps up, chops his head off, but he doesn't die. Gawain is sealed to that oath, this doom that he must do in a year and a day and go face the Green Knight to receive the Green Knight's return stroke. So I'd been telling that first part at demos, particularly for libraries, schools, scout troops, for years, because it's fairly short. It's about 5 minutes. It's creepy, spooky. The guy gets his head chopped off and his big green, magic giant thing, but it's okay because he doesn't die. And I leave out the line of about he's fountaining blood. I just leave that out when I'm talking to the kids. So I'd been doing that first part for a while. And then I get a message from Her Ladyship Ursula Mortimer, who is running Bardic at an upcoming event about 6 months down the road. So she says, hey, Brendan, the venue that we're going to have this event at has this nice little side chapel. It's a church, but it's got a side chapel that would be just perfect for Bardic stuff. What I want to do is give people who I know are pretty solid performers half an hour, 45 minutes to do a set, to do a long form piece or a couple of long pieces, instead of the usual 3 to 7 minutes that we are usually constrained with around most Bardic circles and competitions. Would you like 30 to 45 minutes? I said, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to. She said, okay, I'll put you down. So here I am 6 months out from the event, and I have to decide, what am I going to do? Now, I can do 30 minutes at the drop of a hat. I could probably do 30 minutes of Owen Fife covers. I could do 30 minutes of Bawdy. I could do 30 minutes of Filk without thinking about it. I've done the Brendan show. I spent 8 years busking at the Texas Renaissance Festival in my youth. So I can do the Brendan show. I've done that, been there. Boring. I want to do something new. I want to stretch myself. I want to try something I haven't done before. Gowin and the Green Knight. That's a story. I know part of it. I don't really remember the rest of it, though. I just remember it was long and complicated. So I go and do research. Now, what I don't do is actually read the Middle English poem, because my conceit for telling the first part of the story, which I've been doing for years, is that this is how a storyteller might have told this story before that bloody poet got his hooks into it. So let me read prose versions of the story, which I happen to have several of, and get in my head what the big plot points are, what's the big overarching theme, who are the characters, is there significant dialogue, is there significant symbolism, what are the big pieces of it? And so that's what I did. I went to my library, my bookshelf, and I pulled out some, Arthurian storybooks that I have and got in my head what the major plot points are. And so that was the research that I did after I decided which story to tell. And Lori, she said in the chat, she doesn't know the Gowens story. That's okay. You don't need to know the details of the Gowens story in order for the rest of this to make sense. However, there will be spoilers as I talk about the rest of the process. So that's decide which story to tell. And what was the second point? Hello? Second step? Come on, this is a quiz.
Research. Decide.
Research, very good. Good. So we've done the first two things. What are the next three things? You remember? You can look at your notes.
Edit.
Wordsmith.
Wordsmith.
Okay. Practice, practice, practice.
Practice, practice, practice. Very good. Okay, back to El Cid. Editing. There's not much to edit because I'm making it up out of whole cloth. I'm remembering this basic plot. He dies, they stick him on the horse, he leads the charge out. That's it. The rest is going to be smoke and mirrors. The rest is going to be window dressing and storytelling magic. I don't have to remember much of a plot. I do need to remember the name of his wife, Jimena, and a few facts about her. I need to remember the name of the bad guys, the Almura Betun. Now, my research had turned up, they were actually known by several different names. They were the Almoravid Empire, is the way you often see them referred to in Western history books. That's okay. But the name in Arabic, one of their names in Arabic was the Almura Betun. And oh, that's just a lovely, lovely name for the bad guys, isn't it? It just sounds wicked. No, I don't make it up as I go along, and I'll talk about that. So I had the basic pieces. So now what I had to do was put them in order. So what am I going to do to tell this story and make it a really compelling event? All right. Well, first, I need to introduce myself as an Arabic storyteller. And so I work up an introduction. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am Sheikh Birdani ibn al-Karim, whom your crusades, O king, have left in somewhat reduced circumstances. And at that point, I put my hand through the hole in my Arabic garment because it's been sitting in bad storage for so long. It's actually got a moth-eaten hole in the thing. So what does that do? That immediately introduces me as other. I'm speaking a foreign language. It immediately introduces me as non-threatening, even though I am foreign, because I'm dressed in rags. And so I continue with the introduction. And then I introduce the characters of El Cid and his wife Jimena. And then I place them in the setting, which is the city of Valencia, detail turned up in research. And then I bring in the bad guys, the Almura Betun, and we set up the conflict, right? Basic story, right? Go back to your English Lit 101 in high school, where you have beginning, middle, end, leading action, climax, falling action, setting, characters, plot. So I'm bringing in all those elements and assembling them. So now I've got the bad guys laying siege to the city. I kill El Cid. His wife sticks him on his horse in armor. They lead the charge. There's the climax. Boom. End of story. So that's the editing that I did for El Cid. Gawain and the Green Knight, a little bit different. Gawain and the Green Knight has a lot of plot. It has a lot of stuff going on. And even though I've got 30 to 45 minutes, I don't have 2 hours. So I know I've got to cut stuff out. So what do I need to leave in? Okay. Gowan and the Green Knight is Joe W. Campbell, The Hero's Journey, version 1, subplot A. All right. Young man gets set a challenge, goes out to meet the challenge, undergoes a transformation by overcoming obstacles, external and, most importantly, internal, and returns home a changed individual, having grown and transformed, right? The hero's journey. So what's really important? Well, all of the little things he does on the journey are not terribly important, because what's really important is the interactions that he has with the Lord and Lady Bertilac, his hosts, over Christmas. Because, as we later find out, Lord Bertilac is actually the Green Knight. So what we need to do is reveal aspects of this character's character, his personality, who he is, so that when it's revealed that this jolly bonhomie, ha-ha, Stewart, open a cask, kind of host, jolly host, is actually the very scary Green Knight who got his head chopped off and lived to tell about it. And that revelation that these two are one and the same doesn't say, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. Rather, when the revelation happens, you go, oh, now I get it. So that's really important. What's not important are the hunting scenes and the details of the hunting scenes and the graphic details about how to butcher a deer or how to butcher 100 deer. We don't need to know any of that. What we need to know is that Bertilac, although he is, ha-ha, Stewart, open a cask, we have a guest from Camelot. Great guy, fun host, party dude. He's a man of immense physical strength and courage. He kills a boar. He is tenacious. He chases a fox all day long for a skin. And he's not afraid of slaughter. He comes home covered in blood, laughing about the size of the gut piles. He would be a very dangerous adversary. Oh, and by the way, all this time, these 3 days that he's going out hunting, Sir Bertilac's wife, who is drop dead gorgeous, smoking hot, is trying to seduce Sir Gawain. That sets up the conflict for Gawain's spiritual transformation, which is really the arc of the story. But there is one detail that we need to leave in, very important, and that's Gawain's shield. And if you remember Gawain's shield, it has a 5-pointed star on it, the pentangle, made up of a single ribbon, interlacing amongst itself without beginning or end. It has a great deal of symbolism. Each of the 5 points symbolizes one of the knightly virtues. So that's really important to leave in. It also has explicitly Christian symbolism, and that's important to leave in because although the SCA is a secular organization, although the SCA is populated by a lot of folks who are non-Christian, we do dress up and make believe of the most explicitly Christian period in history. So in order to create this sense of otherwhen, of being transported to a different time and place, I wanted to leave in that explicitly Christian symbolism so that the audience goes, oh, he's talking about this like he's talking about breakfast. Right, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is no longer the 21st century where nobody bats an eye if I have a pentagram tattoo. It helps to create that sense of otherworldliness, otherwhen, that transporting from the modern world. So I wanted to leave that in. Now, there's another chunk of the story in the original that goes into great detail about Gowens Armor. And it describes him being armored piece by piece, and every piece is described in detail. Well, I don't need to go into a whole lot of detail. In fact, for an SCA audience, I don't need to go into any detail at all. Because in the SCA audience, you have two kinds of people. People who know a whole lot about armor, and you don't need to tell them anything other than he was armed in his armor. And people who don't care about armor, and you're going to lose them if you start to go into details about the vambraces and the rarebraces and the sabatons and the gauntlets. However, for a non-SCA audience, for a modern audience, I do go into some detail. I name the various pieces as I'm touching various pieces of my parts of my body, because people have a sense of knight in shining armor. But this makes it real. It's not just something out of a storybook. People actually wore this stuff. I mean, I know I've seen pictures from museums and stuff, but wow, everything has a different name and a different purpose, and it goes in different places. Wow. And it helps the audience understand it and helps transport that audience into this faraway time. So mentally editing Gowan, I know what I'm going to leave in and what I'm going to leave out. The hunting scenes I don't need. But I do need the conversation between Gowan and Bertilac in order to reveal Bertilac's character. Now, one of the tenets of storytelling is show, don't tell. So rather than describe what Bertilac is doing as a narrator, I would rather him just do it, and I act it out, and I say his words in his voice. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. So that's the editing, and it's a very rough cut. It is editing with a chainsaw, because when I work up a new story, I don't write it down and then memorize what I have written. And Bredwin, this speaks to your question, do you make it up as you go along? No, I don't. There are those who advocate, just learn the skeleton of the story and then just tell it extemporaneously. It will be fresh and exciting for your audience. Well, maybe. Because when you do that, it is unfortunately very difficult to escape the fact that you are in fact a 21st century person. And you are used to speaking in 21st century idioms. And you don't notice when, you just kind of slip into modern speech and, Arthur said to Lancelot, let's go check that out. The spell is broken. Your audience is yanked back into the present, and you may not be able to get them back into the Middle Ages. So what I advocate is learn the story. I don't memorize stories. I rehearse them, and especially specific turns of phrases that I really like, that I come up against or come up with as I'm rehearsing the story. I'll do that little phrase, that little sentence over and over and over and over and over and over again, so that my mouth gets it locked in. Because here's a secret. Just like martial arts, just like archery, just like tennis, just like golf, just like any other physical skill, your voice, the words you say, the words you sing, if you're a singer, are produced by muscles and bones. And you get those muscles and bones used to moving in a specific pattern by doing the exact same thing over and over and over again, so that when you do it, it's normal, it's natural, it's easy. This gets us into the wordsmithing. Right? Point number 4. It also intersects with number 5, practice, practice, practice. The reason that tongue twisters and vocal warm-up exercises like Give Me the Gift of a Grip Top Sock are so tricky is that they're hard for your mouth to produce those sounds in that sequence. That's what makes it a fun game to do tongue twisters. When you're telling a story, you don't want tongue twisters because tongue twisters are hard to say. That's why we have rhyme. That's why we have rhythm. That's why we have alliteration, because these things are devices that make words easy to say. And it's not just the consonants that you want to alliterate and rhyme, but also the vowels. And realizing that, and this was years ago when I first started getting into Irish poetry. There's a lot of vowel rhyme in poetry. And if you listen to modern rap, you hear a lot of vowel rhyme, which is really, really interesting. So what are some examples of this? So we're going to get into wordsmithing because we've done the big edits on both of our stories. So let's get into wordsmithing. Back to El Cid. So I gave you a little bit of my introduction. Assalamu alaikum, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am Sheikh Birindani ibn al-Karim. I said that phrase over and over and over and over and over again. I already knew Assalamu alaikum because I'd heard that. And because Arabic is cognate with Hebrew, and I've heard and said a bit of Hebrew over the years, assalamu, shalom, they're cognate words. They mean exactly the same thing, and they sound very, very similar. Both Semitic languages. Surprise, surprise. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Almost any Muslim craftsman is going to begin their task by invoking the name of God, by asking God's blessing on their work. And so as an Arabic storyteller, I'm going to do exactly that. So I introduce myself, and what I do deliberately is leave the name El Cid out until I'm about a minute in. I introduce the character of Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, which is another string of syllables I have to get my mouth trained to say. Don Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, Don Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, whom my people referred to as the Lord, for he treated his captives as guests rather than slaves. We called him the Lord, or in our tongue, Al-Said, which your Frankish tongue renders El Cid. And that was a mic drop, folks. It was a mic drop. I stopped, I shut up, and I heard, the first time I heard it, I heard a collective gasp from the audience. People don't tell El Cid stories. People know that there was this guy, El Cid. You don't really hear very many El Cid stories. And that was a wonderful thing. And at that moment, I knew I'd set the hook. I had him right here. What I did not know was that the king was a huge fan of El Cid. I could not have pandered more if I had tried. Choose your pacing and your words and the point at which you introduce words to have emotional impact. So now we introduce Al-Said's wife. He wed the beautiful Jimena. Now, Jimena is a princess. That's what it says in the research that I did. She was the daughter of King so-and-so. Can I use the word princess in this story? Why not? Come on. What happens if I say the word princess? and I'm telling a story about long ago and far away.
You take it out of character.
Good point. An Arabic man would not have that word in his lexicon. But where does the audience, who despite the fact that we're playing dress up and make believe in the 15th century, are in fact 21st century people, where does your mind immediately go when you hear the word princess?
Princess Bride.
Princess Bride or
Disney.
Disney, exactly. Pink, purple, sparkles. Exactly the wrong direction I want to go, because this woman is a hero. She is powerful. She is strong. Okay. So I'm not going to use the word princess. She's a king's daughter. I could say that. Say those words. A king's daughter. Just say them out loud. You don't have to unmute. Say them out loud.
King's daughter.
A king's daughter. How does that feel in your mouth? What does that sound like in your ear when you say a king's daughter?
In a way, it's a little foreign, but I think it has more power to it than the word princess.
Oh, it is better than princess by far, but it doesn't have any
blocky.
punch. Say again?
It's a bit blocky.
Blocky. Blah. It just kind of falls on the floor and goes plop. King's daughter. Maybe oozes a little bit. Turn the words around. Here's the craftsmanship of the storyteller and bard. Switch the words around. Daughter of a king. Daughter of a king. Daughter of a king. That's a war drum. That's a chant. You can hear troops stomping and cheering. Daughter of a king. Daughter of a king. Use that. Use that. Play with the words until they have punch and emotional impact. So we did that. And again, that worked. Now, I didn't shout it, I didn't scream it, but I definitely kept that rhythm. The beautiful Jimena, daughter of a king. That's how I introduced her. Now, another technique of storytelling is repetition and foreshadowing. That's some foreshadowing. You don't recognize it as foreshadowing, but when I come back to it, you're going to remember that particular turn of phrase. Because after Al-Said dies, every besieged city has spies. And word of the death of Al-Said quickly spread through the camp of the Al-Murabitun. Al-Said is dead. Al-Said is dead? Al-Said is dead. Al-Said is dead. Al-Said is dead. Al-Said is dead. All night, the cruel chant echoed through the walls of Valencia, breaking every heart, but not that of Jimena. Jimena, the beautiful. Jimena, the wise. Jimena, daughter of a king, widow of a warlord, gave orders that her husband's body should be clad in armor. So you hear that rhythm. It's got punch. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Practice, practice, practice. I have 2 days to learn this thing, right? It's Thursday, and I deliver this on Saturday. I've got to get some work done. So the Al-Murabitun, I got to introduce these guys as bad guys, right? And I have to remember that phrase, the Al-Murabitun. So I use another storytelling technique of repetition. And I use their attributes, the things that they're famous for, with repetition to really build up their resume as an adversary worthy of our hero. Then came the Al-Murabitun. The Al-Murabitun, whose very name means those who tie their tents outside the city walls to make war. The Al-Murabitun, whose empire stretched 3,000 miles down the coast of Africa, the Almorbitun, who defeated King Alfonso at the Battle of Alfalaca, where the field was slick with blood. Now, I could have said the Almorbitun, who had inflicted defeat upon King Alfonso at the Battle of Almorbitun, so named because there was so much blood mixed in with the mud of the field that the horses and men lost their footing. This is not a history class. The field was slick with blood. Slick is a dangerous word. It's a knife being drawn from its sheath. It has sharp edges, that SL, hissing, that sharp edge. Choose words that have punch, that have emotional impact. All right, enough about El Cid. What about Gawain? So the first thing we have to do is get Gawain out of the hall on New Year's Eve, having just survived his encounter with the Green Knight, and fast forward through a year to his departure. And a brilliant turn of phrase came to mind. And again, I said it over and over and over and over again to lock in those words into my mouth, because it's easy for it to become a tongue twister or worse. The year passed all too quickly for Sir Gawain. Winter melted into spring. Spring blossomed into summer. Summer ripened into fall, and as the autumn harvests were being brought in, Gawain made preparation for his journey. And yes, that chunk of animation from Monty Python and the Holy Grail is running in my head, and I can't do that bit from Holy Grail anymore because it interferes with my telling of the story of Gawain and the Green Knight, because the words are just a little too similar. Gave spring and autumn a miss and went right back into fall, something like that, and the limb falls off the tree and goes on the guy. So the movie is playing in my head as I'm telling the story. And in many ways, I'm describing the movie that I see playing in my head when I'm telling the story. I talk about Gawain's shield, and after I told it like the first time or two, I decided to reverse a couple of points of the star, and I put the fifth one as Mary's 5 joys. And here's how I say it. The fifth point of the star represented the 5 joys of Mary, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, she whose image was limned on the inside of Gawain's shield, whereupon he could gaze and draw courage whenever he felt afraid. Oh, I see confusion in your eyes. Think it you strange that a hero should know fear? 'Tis not so. Only the fool knows no fear. The hero takes his fear in hand, examines it from every angle, peruses each page of it, and when he has known his fear in full, sets it behind him to do the thing which must be done. Yeah. At the time I was working that particular bit up, our troops were taking very heavy losses overseas, and a lot of flag-draped coffins were coming home. And I can't tell you how many times I had to repeat that until I could get through it without losing it partway through. And that's one of the things that a bard can do and needs to do. This is really part of my philosophy class, but we take our audience to the edge of the emotional abyss and let them look over the edge. And they allow us to do that because they trust us not to let them fall. And the only way we can do that is if we have climbed over that edge ourselves and know what's on the other side. It's okay to lose it during rehearsal. It's okay to choke up a bit and tear up a bit during performance. You don't want to lose it in performance, because you want to be able to, you need to be able to bring your audience back from that emotional edge, which means that if you do an emotional piece, you have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over again until you can get through it. Not without feeling. You want to feel it, because if you don't feel it, you can't sell it. Few of us are that good of an actor, but you don't want to lose it. You got to be able to get through it. And whether that takes 3 times through, 5 times through, 300 times through, if you want to be able to do that, have that impact, then you've got to put in the work to practice it until you can do it, and know that you can do it. Be confident that you can do it. So other things that you do, there's a bunch of wordsmithing that I could talk about, but I want to talk about characters. I want to talk about casting the story. El Cid, there's really no dialogue. So I actually have the story cast in my head with Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren, because why not? They're not saying anything. They're just doing, I'm a narrator. I've established myself as a narrator. I spent some effort creating this alternate persona that's telling the story. Gowan and the Green Knight, though, I'm playing a movie in the audience's head. The narrator is not a character, but it has some pretty strong characters. And so I cast the characters. So let's see if you get in your head the same sorts of images that I get in my head. The first character we meet is Sir Lancelot, who leaps up from his seat in outrage. Who are you to enter the presence of the king, unbidden, unannounced, and bearing warlike weapons? Generic outrage Frenchman. That's the only line he has. I don't have to go into much else. King Arthur is generic, genteel, nobleman, British accent. And Magdalena, you're probably going to hate me for what I'm doing with the British accent. But it's what Americans expect, I think, for a British accent. Look at the size of him. He'll kill you in a single stroke. He doesn't have many lines. Gowan is, and I keep forgetting the guy's name. I really should have it written down somewhere. The young actor who played the young King Arthur in that marvelous mess of a movie, Excalibur, from the 1980s. That John Boorman monstrosity with the shiny plate armor and the Carl Orff score. But he's very young and very earnest. And I always see him in profile in my head. And he's got a bit of an Irish accent, which is perfect for Gowan, because Gowan is the son of King Lot of Orkney. So it makes sense for him to have a bit of a lilt. And he's very, very earnest because he's very young. He's like a young Luke Skywalker in many ways. And I can do the Irish accent fairly easily because I spent a lot of time with Irish nuns as a youth. And so it comes back fairly easily. The Green Knight is big, he's mean, he's bad-tempered, and he has absolutely no respect whatsoever for Arthur or any of his men. The Green Knight looked down and laughed. Has the king no knights or even squires, that he sends a page boy out to treat with me? Sound familiar? I'm disinclined to acquiesce to your request. Means no. It's Captain Barbarossa, who's playing the Green Knight in my head. Now then, the Green Knight is also Sir Bertilac, which we don't know yet, but I'm going to engage in some storytelling magic, which is foreshadowing. And so Bertilac has the same voice, but he's smiling rather than sneering. Ah, Sir Gawain, you shall spend the Christmas season with us. Stew and open a cask. We have a guest from Camelot. So it's that same gravelly voice, same kind of lower class accent, not refined. But he's got a smile, and actually smile instead of sneer. When I'm doing the voice of Gawain, the voice of the Green Knight, I'm actually sneering. I'm scrunching my eyes down because that helps me produce that voice. But, aha, my friend! I raise the eyebrows, I lift up the voice, lift up the face, and I'm smiling, which helps produce, again, the same voice. Now, that is a gravelly voice. It is hard on the throat. And when I've done the Brit Lit classes, there are usually 2 sections back to back starting at 8 a.m. By the time I'm done with the second telling of the story, I'm done talking for the day. Please. So those are those guys. Now we have the Lady Bertilac. And the Lady Bertilac, as I said, is a drop-dead, smoking hot babe. What more seductive voice could there be than, "Good morning, Sir Gawain. How is it that a knight on campaign sleeps so soundly? Who knows what assault you might have suffered as you slumbered?" I don't know about you. In my head, that's Marilyn Monroe. Sultry, seductive. "Happy birthday, Mr. President." And in the college classroom, it is so fun to watch these 19 and 20-year-old guys squirming in their seats. Because what 19 or 20-year-old guy would not want to hear that voice whispering in his ear? And how weird is it that that voice is coming out of this fuzzy mug? So that's the cast, with one exception. The squire who leads Gawain from the Castle Bertilac to the place where the road diverges. To the left is the Chapel of the Green Knight, where he must meet his fate and meet his doom. Or turning to the right, where he can just go home and no one will be the wiser. And so the squire says to him, "Sir Gawain, do not turn to the left, for that way lies only doom and destruction. Turn to the right, go home. No one will be the wiser." Because after all, in all of heroic literature, what better squire is there than Samwise Gamgee? So, final exam time. What are the 5 steps of turning text source material into a compelling storytelling experience?
Research.
Lori, unmute.
Research. Decide which story to tell. Edit. Wordsmith. And practice, practice, practice.
Very good. Go forth and do likewise. Knock their socks off. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Bye.
Thank you.